Pie crust is not as scary as you think. The holidays are fast approaching, and that means so is pie season. Let's find the joy in making an all-butter pie crust that's flaky and delicious. To make the crust, we'll start by mixing our dry ingredients. Combine the flour and salt in the work bowl of your food processor and pulse to mix. Then add the salted butter cut into teaspoon-sized pieces and pulse until it resembles fine meal. You can see the texture here. Whisk together with a fork 1 egg, 1 tablespoon of white vinegar, and 3 tablespoons of cold water. Pour that into the flour mixture and pulse to mix until it pulls away from the sides of the bowl. If you need to, you can add a little extra water, as much as a total of 5 tablespoons. Turn your dough out onto your work surface. Now I'll finish kneading it together very quickly and lightly. It will continue to pull together as it's in the refrigerator. You're going to want to create 2 large discs of dough. If it's too dry, you can add a little more water, but you're going to put it in the refrigerator wrapped in parchment, and the moisture will redistribute itself while it's in the refrigerator. You want them to be about the same size, so sort of work around to make them the size they should be. That's ready to go in the refrigerator. You could also freeze them if you prefer. They're good for up to a month in the freezer. While our pie crust is chilling, let's make a filling. It's apple season, so let's make an apple pie. I'm going to start by taking some tapioca flour and stirring that into granulated sugar. By stirring it together like this, I'll eliminate any lumps in the flour. I'm also going to add some cinnamon, a little bit of salt, and some nutmeg. And I'm using, of course, fresh grated nutmeg. Then I'll add some candied ginger. And I've taken candied ginger pieces, which are nice and soft. They have a really great texture, but I'm chopping them into bits that I'll add in with the other dry ingredients. These will give a really nice pop of ginger flavor when you're eating the pie. I've peeled and sliced my apples, so here they go into the bowl. And to that, I'll add some lemon zest, I like to add about a tablespoon. I think that this also adds a really spectacular flavor to the pie. And then I'll add all of the juice from the lemon. This will help reduce the browning of the apple, and it will also add a nice tanginess that will complement the sweetness. So I'll stir all of this together to mix. And then I'll add the sugar mixture and let everything coat and sit until I'm ready to fill the crust. The tapioca flour that I've added is going to absorb the juices of the apple and the lemon and sort of gel and help the apple pie to have a nice set so it holds its shape and isn't too juicy. It'll really give everything a nice balance. Now it's time to get ready to roll our dough. It's a big decision what sort of rolling pin to use. They come in many different shapes and sizes. I actually collect them. These are a few that I like, but there's really only one that I enjoy using for rolling pie crust or most other things. This is a tapered French style rolling pin, and I love the control that I have when I roll the dough with this because you can really sort of adjust it and the thickness as you're rolling it because of the shape that the pin has. These other rolling pins are also wonderful, but I personally find that I don't have quite as much control with this, and it's not as easy to maneuver and get a perfectly smooth piece of dough when you're filling your pie pan or rolling to cut something. Also, I like having a bench scraper. It's not a very fancy tool, and I've lost mine. Hold on. This is a bench scraper, and I love these. They're so wonderful for cleaning the work surface and also for dividing things, or you can even use them to chop. But when you're working with pastry, they're really wonderful for helping you lift and maneuver and cut or dice. Also, It doesn't hurt if you're a very warm-natured person or if you're in a warm environment to use a little ice. Put your hands in a bowl of cold water or ice water for a few minutes before you start working with your pie crust. Some chefs will walk into their walk-in refrigerator to sort of cool down and drop their body temperature because there are little tiny deposits of butter throughout your pie dough, and you want to make sure that they don't melt completely until they're in the oven. So keeping your hands cool and being sort of calm and collected while you roll out the dough makes a huge difference and helps you to have more success with getting a flaky and delicate crust. When it's time to bake your pie, what pan you use is a big decision. This is my favorite. It's a deep dish pie pan, and because it's dark on the bottom, it absorbs a little more heat and helps the crust, I think, to be a little more crispy. I also have glass pie pans. They're great because you can see what's going on in the bottom, but I find that these give you a slightly crispier crust. Also, if I'm making a quiche, I'll sometimes use either a fluted edge quiche pan or a shallow pan like this. This is a tart pan. Some restaurants and some bakers like to use a springform pan and have a deeper dish quiche, but I like the dimensions of this, so this is what I use when I make a quiche. Today, for our apple pie, I'll go for this one. My dough is chilled, so I'm ready to roll it out. I'll lightly flour my work surface. Remove it from my parchment paper. If you're using plastic wrap, remove it from that as well. And then roll it to a thickness of about 1/4 of an inch. I am gentle when I roll out the pie dough. I don't do a lot of back and forth. I tend to rotate the dough and push it more in one direction. I do go back and forth a little, but not as much as some people do. I also try to think about making a circle or whatever shape I'm trying to roll out. Occasionally I do roll dough for a square or rectangular tart pan, but I just contemplate, where do I need more dough? And I push the dough in that direction. You can add more flour if you need it while you're working the dough, but don't add too much. When you think you've rolled it out almost as big as you need it to be, take your pan, turn it upside down and check to see if it's a large enough piece. I'm going to roll it out just a little bit more because the depth of the pan is such that it's going to shrink a little smaller once I put everything in it. Now this is a very delicate piece of dough, and transferring it to the pan requires a little finesse or a rolling pin. The way that I like to transfer my dough is by taking it and rolling it gently around the rolling pin, and then I use the rolling pin for strength and support to transfer it. You could also use a piece of parchment or plastic wrap, but I just find this to be a lot easier and less wasteful. Once it's in the pan, I'm going to make a double crust pie today, so I'll go ahead and press it into the pan. Now, this recipe makes enough dough for either 1 double crust pie or 2 single crust pies. If you're making a single crust pie and you're filling it after you bake it, that's going to require a technique called blind baking. And for that, what you'll do is take your crust and fill it with a piece of parchment paper, or you can use foil. But first, before you do that, dock it. Take a fork and press a few holes in the bottom of the pan. And add wheat, beans, or rice to sort of hold everything down while it bakes. Now, I did not flute the edges of this because I'm not going to blind bake my pie today. I'm actually going to make a double crust pie. But if I were blind baking it, I would put it in the oven, let it bake for about 15 minutes at a high temperature. The exact time is in the recipe notes below. And then I would remove this and allow the pie crust to finish cooking completely and get a nice golden brown color. I'm going to go ahead and show you how I would do a double crust pie now. For our double crust apple pie, I'll go ahead and add the apple slices and the juice that I've already prepared. So all of this goodness goes into the pie pan. And then I'll prepare my top crust. Before the crust goes on top, dot the top of the apples with about 2 tablespoons of butter. It's a little easier if the butter's cold, but you can use soft butter too. You just want to let that melt and create a little extra flavor with all of the other good things that are in the filling. Now let's do the top crust. It'll be just like doing the bottom crust, except a little bit smaller because it doesn't have to account for the depth of the pan. So I'll go ahead and roll it. All of those little bits of butter that are sort of encapsulated by the flour and salt are going to melt and crisp and create little flaky layers as the pie crust bakes. So now that I've got it big enough and thin enough, I'll transfer it to my pie. Let's get this all put together, and then I'll brush it with an egg wash. First though, I'm going to seal the edges by pressing the 2 layers of dough all the way around. Now that everything is nicely sealed, I'll take a fork and cut a few holes in the top of the pie to allow some of the steam to escape. And I'll go ahead and flute the edges. Now at this point you could trim away all of the excess dough if you want. I love the crust though, so I'm going to leave a little of it there, and then I'll take my bench scraper and I'll use that to sort of trim away the excess where it extends beyond the pan. You could also fold it under, but I'll show you what we can do with all of this extra dough in just a minute. So I'm really just trimming it so that it's uniform all the way around. And then we'll flute the edges. To flute the edges, I'm going to use my thumb and 2 fingers to press everything together, creating a nice scalloped border. You can finish the edges of your pie however you like. You could cut shapes and overlap them. You could use a fork to press a fork pattern around the edges. You could create a braid or a twist. It's really up to you. This is where you can be creative and have a lot of fun. It's good. So what we'll do next is take an egg and separate it. If you use the yellow part, you'll have a nice golden crust. If you use the white, then you'll have a glossy crust. I'm going to use just the white for the pie today. You could even use both parts and have different colors. Do some of it with the yolk and some of it with the white. Whisk it really well. Brush the top of your pie crust with your egg white. And when you've coated everything, I like to sprinkle coarse sugar on top. I'm using sugar in the raw. You could use Madeira or castor sugar, whatever kind you prefer. Just get everything nice and evenly coated with the egg white. And then add that sugar. And it'll give a nice sparkle to the pie. And it's ready to go in the oven. We'll take the scraps and make a few leaves to use for garnish later. I've pressed together all of the scraps from rolling out the dough earlier, and now I'll just gently roll those out again and use a cookie cutter to create some shapes that I'll use for a garnish. I like to take my leaves after I've cut them and embellish them a little further with some definition for the veins. And they're so cute to add to a cheese board, garnish a salad, or serve as a garnish with your pie. Our pie is perfect. It's golden brown and delicious, and it's ready to enjoy with a little vanilla ice cream, I think. I also have the little leaves that we made for garnishing. Just don't forget they're in the oven. They cook very quickly when they're this small. But I hope this will give you some kitchen courage to make your own pie crust and to make a beautiful fresh pie for someone to enjoy and for you to enjoy as well. Thanks for joining me in the kitchen, and I'll see you again soon.